So, Bernie Sanders has dropped out of the race. I got an article here. We're going to read through it a little bit. You know what I'm saying? Just, the cover of the article, as we always do. You know what I'm saying? So y'all can get their opinion. And then I'm going to tell you exactly what really happened with Bernie Sanders' campaign. All right. So why did Bernie Sanders drop out? The progressive majority he needed doesn't exist. The senator's loss highlights the limitations of progressive politics at the national level and suggests the Democratic Party is quite simply center-left. Well, this is absolutely true for the most part, right? But not really. Senator Bernie Sanders, independent of Vermont, wants a political revolution. Former Vice President Joe Biden wants to beat President Donald Trump. Biden's vision has now won out. He is the apparent Democratic nominee at Sanders suspended his campaign Wednesday following a mid-pandemic Wisconsin primary marred by vast polling site closures and U.S. Supreme Court ruling that effectively invalidated many absentee ballots. Sanders said given the risk to voters, his campaign would not engage in traditional efforts to get them to the polls. His announcements, however, came weeks after Biden effectively clinched the nominations by cleaning up on Super Tuesday and in several big states primaries a week later. Biden's win isn't exactly a testament to his astounding political skills. He'd formerly run for the nomination twice before, in 1988 and 2008, and failed after gaffe-filled campaigns both times. In his first run, Biden didn't even make it to the 1988 primaries, dropping out in September 1987 amid plagiarism charges. In 2016, Biden finished fifth in the Iowa caucuses and dropped out the next day, having never really recovered after dismissing then-rival Senator Barack Obama as the first sort of mainstream African-American. That wasn't 2016, that was 2008, right? To articulate the bright and clean and nice-looking guy. Yeah, thus in 2020, Biden was only a viable candidate because his former two-term vice president for a still popular former president. His primary cycle victory then reflects his appeal among broad swaths of the Democratic base. The moderate-leaning nature of the broad Democratic electorate and voters' single-minded focus on defeating Trump in November. This all points to what will likely be a tough but winnable campaign against Trump between now and Election Day. That's not going to happen. Legit, that's just not going to happen. He's not going to beat Trump unless Trump voters stay home because they think they have it won already, which is a possibility. That really is. And in particular, his decisive win over Sanders in the primary without even campaigning in many states further highlights the limitations of progressive politics in America, at least in winning a national campaign. Sanders, a self-described democratic socialist, made a bad bet on the existence of a national progressive majority, as did Senator Elizabeth Warren, who ran as progressive populist but dropped out after Super Tuesday. It turns out there's nothing even close. In fact, there's not even clear that a progressive majority exists within the Democratic Party. What does exist is a moderately center-left party with a vocal progressive element. Yeah, Twitter, exists. Sanders frequently said in the campaign trail he was leading a multi-generational, multiracial movement, pledging to mobilize an army of young voters, but it turns out older and moderate voters are the ones that grew as a share of the Democratic primary electorate since 2016. Yeah, old people don't really... Old people don't really like Donald Trump. That's the truth of the matter. Like, I know we all go, oh man, all these boomers are out here. Yo, look, there's a lot of military vets and redneck boomers who like Trump. But I've met a lot of yuppie boomers, all right? Legit, just walking around having conversations with people who don't like Trump because he represents an America they're not comfortable with. You know what I'm saying? Like, the individuals who care about how high their grass is in their backyard are the type of individuals who really fucking hate Donald Trump. Take the South Carolina primary on February 29th, which Biden won the 10 or 14 states he captured on Super Tuesday. And all he appealed to the same coalitions that boosted Democrats so strongly in the 2018 midterm elections, turning out large numbers of suburban voters while maintaining support from long-standing elements of the Democratic coalition, particularly African-American voters. Or look at Florida, where Biden crushed Sanders 62-23 in the March 17th primary, winning every county in the process. According to exit polls, Biden won overwhelmingly among voters aged 40 and up. And while Sanders did win voters under the age of 30s, he didn't do so nearly at the rate he needed to seriously challenge Biden's dominance in other categories. And ideological, 50% of the Florida Democratic primary voters called themselves moderate or somewhat conservative. Yeah. Like, it is what it is. While only 22% called themselves very liberal and only 19% called themselves somewhat liberal. Right? Again, putting Sanders' thesis that there is a silent progressive majority waiting for a candidate to marshal them to the polls in question. All right. So, I don't know if we've read enough of this yet. Let's keep going. Let's let them have their whole little thing here. Primary voters' choices also showed the limits, even among Democrats, as Sanders called for Medicare for all, which would effectively banish private health insurance in favor of a government-run program. Here, Sanders was treading on what everyone, for good reason, believed was fertile ground. Healthcare was an issue that registered voters nationally considered the most important, according to the Hill-Harris X poll taken December 8th and 9th of 2019. But Sanders' plan, it seemed, was not exactly the voters' preferred solution. Kaiser Family Foundation polling in 2019 repeatedly showed that the majority of Democrat and Democrat-leaning voters preferred reforming the Affordable Care Act, implementing a public option, or a Medicare-Medicaid buy-in rather than Medicare for all. And 67% of Medicare for all supporters hang on, I lost where I was. Mistakenly believed that they would keep their own health insurance were it implemented. Sanders' early Democratic primary rivals, Warren and Senator Kamala Harris of California, each initially embraced visions of Medicare for all, but quickly retreated when it became clear that the voters weren't interested. Biden consistently criticized Medicare for all as unrealistic and outrageously expensive and pushed instead for an expansion of the Affordable Care Act, the signature domestic achievement of the president he serves. On a range of other issues too, climate change, immigration, college affordability, tax policy, Biden's agenda was more centrist and more popular among Democratic primary voters than Sanders. While Sanders insisted that its vision represented the majority of the Democratic coalition, that's not, of course, to say Sanders didn't have an effect on the politics of the race. Since becoming the increasingly apparent Democratic nominee, Biden has moved to the left on some issues, including speaking favorably of Warren's bankruptcy plan, a significant change from the clash at a 2005 Senate hearing when she was a Harvard law school professor and he represented Delaware. The state has that's home to the U.S. credit card industry. Recently, Biden also backed a proposal by Sanders that would make tuition free at public colleges and universities for families with income under $125,000. Still with the 2020 Democratic primary process essentially is over, it's clear that the hardcore Democratic left was deluded in their assertions that they were the new Democratic majority. They're going to need a better grip on reality they're successful at the national level moving forward. Okay, so here's what happened with, with Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders, every time he got attacked, all right, he backpedaled and ran into a corner. All right. He wasn't interested in fighting. He wasn't interested in standing up for his solutions. He wasn't interested in standing here slinging mud. You know what I mean? Like, he was in a fight and like he had nothing to offer. He was in a fight unarmed. And like, just like last time when he stood there and he had them two individuals or three individuals from Black Lives Matter come up and took the mic from him. It happened again in this campaign. The guy's weak. All right. An American hates a weakling. We hate that shit. And when he stands here and he starts going, woo, 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 and he never offered up any numbers either. That's the real bitch. It's like he stood here and he said, like, he came out of his mouth about like these pie in the sky dreams he had, but he never offered up any numbers or how he was going to actually pay for them. He's like, we're going to add a value added tax. And how much is that going to generate, Bernie? Well, I'm not real sure of the numbers. I don't really have the numbers right in front of me. And I'll put this shit on video before. But let's be honest here. All right. People know when they're going to get screwed. All right. Because the reality is, if they don't tax you to death for this, they're going to end up printing you into oblivion and making your dollar worthless and making your paycheck worthless. Because that's what we did with the bailouts. And that's what we did, with, the Affordable Care Act and the war in Iraq. Like in 2000, the average price of a house was $125,000. Today, the average price of a house is $385,000. Well, I don't know about today. That with the corona stuff going on. But I'm saying, You know what I mean? And that shows the big difference in what happens when you print yourself into oblivion. You literally destroy your own paycheck. You know, because they know that they can't tax. Like, when they came out with that libertarian study, it said, oh, it'd be cheaper to do Medicare for all. If you went to the last page of it, and this is the important part, if you go to the last page of it and you read the whole report, it said, but in order to do so, you would have to raise taxes, double all taxes in America. And even then, you still wouldn't pay fully for it. That's the bitch. That's the reality of it. That's the part they're not talking about. And here's the other thing, right? Once you start adding in inflation because you're printing all this money and printing all this money and printing all this money, right? Your money becomes more and more worthless every year. And when that happens, the cost of it continues to go up exponentially. We want to fix these things legit. It might require us using our military to enforce our patents. Because that's really why our medicine's so expensive. Like, why is medicine so expensive? Because when they make a medicine, it takes 10, 20 years, whatever, to bring it to market, with the FDA approval and testing and all these type of things. And we develop 94% of all drugs in America, right? And when we do so, we stand here and we take it out, and other countries go, well, we go, in order for us to make our money back, inside of the first 2 years or whatever it is, or the 5 years or whatever their plan is, it doesn't matter. They go, it's going to be 125 a pill, right? And Canada goes, we'll give you 8, right? And the companies go, well, we can't give it to you for 8. They say, well, either you give it to us for 8, or we're going to stand here and make it ourselves and just steal your fucking shit and put it out as a generic, and then we'll sell it back to America and bankrupt your company. And so they have to sell it for fucking 8 to these people. And the issue is that America doesn't use its fucking military in the way it should. It doesn't use, its power and its sway to stand here and go, fuck that, dude. What the hell did you just tell our companies? Or we're over here paying for your shit? Because then they charge Americans $300 a fucking pill for something. That's why shit's so expensive in America. It's not individuals out here profiteering. That's not the situation. It's less expensive everywhere the fuck else because of the fact that they don't respect our patents. They don't respect, our companies when we're out here doing all the work in the free market to pay for all this shit. Because they don't make shit because they have socialism, and socialism doesn't create anything. That's the fucking reality of the matter. Because you require capital to fucking stand here and invent shit. And it requires individual to be able to be rewarded with profit. You know what I'm saying? And have the opportunity. Like, if you make the newest cancer drug out there or whatever, and you cure some disease, I don't have a problem with you making $1 billion off of that. I have no issue with that, because you're worth that to our society. That's what you're worth, because you stood there and did something for the good of all mankind. Why shouldn't you be rewarded handsomely for it? That's real shit. And, I'm just being honest. I'm just keeping it all the way funky with you. So that's the reality of it. And, the thing is most people don't make $1 billion off of that. The company does, but the company puts that money into the shareholders are the ones who end up standing here. How do I put this? The shareholders are the ones who enjoy the profit on that. But anyway, y'all look, man, I apologize I ain't drop on this morning. I got my daughters, what I'm saying? My baby's mom's dropped them off. I don't know when the fuck they going home. She didn't even tell me. She's like, yo, here, take them. I was like, all right. She dropped off like $150 in food. I was like, good luck. Like, all right, I guess I'm going to have them for a little bit. It is what it is. But I'm going to, get them knocked out every night, and then I'm going to make a video be what it is. Maybe I'll make one early in the morning before they get up. I don't know. We'll see what happens. In the meantime, you know the deal, man. It's Tom P's with Pnoid News. I'll holler at y'all. Peace.